Now today the coalition might just have been saved because new Liberal leader Susan Lee has now realised she must lead. Now I think she should have done it before, but at least she has done it now. Lee today met the Nationals leader David Littleproud 2 days after he walked out of the coalition. She messaged him, asked for the meeting and said she could fix this. So both backed off. Lee scrapped her plans to announce her all-Liberal shadow ministry, and Littleproud sent home the Nationals politicians that he was going to make his own spokesman.
I had a brief meeting with Susan Lee and she made an offer to reconvene her party room to discuss the 4 policy areas that the National Party demand as part of a coalition agreement, and I thank her for that. And as a consequence, I have decided to send those spokespeople home as a sign of good faith. And Susan, as a sign of good faith, will not be announcing shadow cabinet. This is a positive step forward.
Lee now has about 8 weeks before Parliament returns to get her party to agree to those 4 demands the Nationals made as a condition of staying in the coalition. And like I said last night in my columns as well, agreeing to the Nationals' demands should have been a no-brainer. Lee should have agreed to them already at the start of the week. Yes to allowing nuclear power, and yes to tough divestiture laws against the supermarket chains that abuse market power. Yes to a development fund for the bush, and yes to minimum standards of telecommunications coverage for the bush. How hard could any of that be? But Lee stuck to process. You know, oh, I need to review all Liberal policies first, all of them, consult my party and so on.
The timeline that they were talking about was months away. It was a review of all policies.
And that was plainly ridiculous, unworkable. So this really could have been resolved very quickly with a quick group chat of the Liberal politicians. And I actually understand, I mean, for instance, this is how easy it is. I understand from prominent people from both sides of the Liberals, the left and Conservatives, that about 80% of their party room would back nuclear anyway. So why couldn't Lee make a quick call, be decisive, and keep this coalition together? Even if you think the Nationals, you know, give us the 4 demands or else, even if you think that was too much. And today, as I said, Lee risked making a second mistake, announcing a shadow ministry, only of Liberals because the Nationals had balked. That would actually make peace even harder, because if they did come together again, she would have to sack about 6 of her new spokesmen, Liberals, to give the Nationals their share of those top jobs. That would have been so ugly, so destabilising. Well, bingo. Seems Lee suddenly can make a quick decision after all. This is promising. Well, at least, you know, let's hope it all comes through, but we shall see. What a huge lesson to her and to the Liberals. But at some cost, like in trust. Some of the Liberals were actually stupidly leaking stuff against the Nationals to muddy the waters or maybe deliberately make peace harder. One leaked this letter that Bridget McKenzie, leader of the Nationals in the Senate, wrote to the Liberals leader in the Senate, Michaelia Cash, and this is days and days before the Lee became leader, you know, saying that with Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price defecting to the Liberals, the National Senate party room would now need to reconsider our position with respect to sitting with the Liberal Party as a coalition in the Senate chamber.
There's been a lot of leaking going on, it would seem, of texts, of letters, of conversations. I don't think it's in anyone's interests for those matters to be leaked, because it actually breaches and breaks trust.
Now, a lot of politicians on both sides, Liberals, Nationals, they're going to have to get right over themselves with this truce is going to end in real peace and a coalition. I mean, I'll give you a measure of the anger. Claims that Lee is in the pocket of the too powerful left-wing Liberal power broker Michael Photius, for instance, a lobbyist with interests in renewable energy. I'm not sure I buy that, although, you know, Photius should be out of the party, obviously. And there's been talk of trying to get Conservative Liberals like Angus Taylor to join the Nationals and become and make the Nationals the official opposition, because when they all do, they'll outnumber the Liberal left that's left behind. That sounds to me actually more like a threat. But it tells you there's a lot of anger that's been released, and getting the coalition back together again is going to take a lot more trust than we've seen, a lot of TLC, and a bit more leadership than we've seen as well. But today was a start. Joining me back from his surgery is our Thursday regular guest, Nationals MP, Barnaby Joyce, the former Deputy Prime Minister. Barnaby, great to see you. Look, first of all, how are you travelling? Are you okay?
Yeah, look, to all your viewers, thank you very much for your kind support. I had my prostate removed, and after it was removed, they did the histology on it. They found that there was a clear partition between the cancerous growth and the edge of my prostate. That's very good. Otherwise, it metastasizes, as you've seen with former President Biden, and goes into your bones. So that's an overwhelmingly good prognosis, and that's what I expected at the start. I say to all your male listeners and to all the ladies who hold men or men dear and close in their heart, if they're over the age of 40, get a PSA test. Make sure they have a PSA test. I say to the doctors watching this, go through your patient list, make sure the guys have had a PSA test. And I say once more, and I've said it numerous times, thank you to my local GP who insisted I get a PSA test. In fact, it was on speakerphone, and when my staffers in the car heard it, heard my doctor berating me saying, get a PSA test. And my staff are saying, you clown, why don't you do this? And booking me immediately in for one. If that hadn't happened, in 2 years' time, we'd have a very sad conversation.
Well, I'm so glad to your staffer and to your doctor, and that you did relent and do that. The PSA test, by the way, people, you just need to go and get blood, go to your GP, get a blood sample tested. That's it. Barnaby, this truce today, did Susan Lee give in, or did your leader David Littleproud go wobbly after all the media criticism?
Who cares? What we need is an effective coalition to make sure that we have a cogent and efficacious capacity as an opposition to hold the Labor government to account. We all have concerns about net zero, don't we? Oh, I do. What does it cost? No one has actually told us. What is the effects? No one's actually told us. The fact that the majority of the globe and the majority of global economy is not part of us, where's that debate? That needs to be brought forward by a very virulent but cogent opposition, and we need to be able to form that. We have the fact that they've cracked the superannuation egg with unrealised capital gains, something you've never made, money you've never made, and apparently they're going to tax you for it, which will be incredibly difficult. It will be disastrous for so many family farms that are held in superannuation funds. If you have a $10 million family farm, that's not unusual these days. You have no intention of selling it. You've probably got an 18% capital gain you've been having the last few years. So you've got a $1.8 million capital gain at 30%, 3.8, well, is that 30, 3, that's 24. So $540,000 you'd have to pay to Jim Chalmers in a year. This, these are the things.
Can I bring you back to what really is the news this week, though? And that is this divorce that seems to have lasted 2 days. The Liberals now suggesting they think they can live with the policy to at least drop the ban on nuclear power, which is what you demanded. But here's the thing, Barnaby. Nationals like you and Matt Canavan actually wanted more. I know it's not part of the 4 demands to the Liberals, but you wanted an end to the net zero target. Has David Littleproud, your leader, actually demanded enough from the Liberals?
Well, I suppose we have to have that discussion in the Nats party room, and to be quite frank, to have that discussion, seeing all policies go back to the drawing board in the Liberal Party room. I don't want to go to war with the Liberal Party. I don't want to go to war with anyone, actually. I want to have a political debate with the Labor Party, not with the Liberal Party. And so I've been of the mind to try and park this internecine issue and move on to the one that really matters, which is holding a government to account. That is for all my sins where my endeavours are focused.
Well, Peacemaker Barnaby, and a good role for you, a different role.
Logically.
Did David Littleproud then push this too hard, too fast? Did it actually need to come to this walkout?
Well, look, I'm not going to have a retrospective on that, Andrew. I'm going to have a prospective
well, you could have
on.
defended him.
Well, look, I'm glad that I believe that we are getting to a sensible outcome. I hope. I think that it's imperative, if we have any prospect whatsoever in a 2028 election, that we arrive there as a united front. And I don't know what role I'll be playing in that, but that's what I think is good for our nation. I think the Australian people deserve a competent government and a cogent and inquisitive and cerebral opposition, and with their best players playing.
Barnaby Joyce, all that's true. I just note for the viewers, of course, that I gave you a couple of opportunities to say that David Littleproud did not go too far and too fast in putting the demands to the Liberals. You didn't take that, but who knows?
You might say that I could not.
Maybe the painkillers can be to blame. Thank you so much for your time.